like to mention our sponsors for today's event: Via Sport, Sport Burnaby, and Canadian Direct Insurance. Today is hosted by Volleyball BC and delivered in partnership with Basketball BC, the BC Lacrosse Association, and BC School Sports. Thank you to all those organizations. Our first speaker on the agenda, John O'Sullivan, is a best-selling author, blogger, and deep thinker on the issues around children and youth sport. In 2012, he founded the Changing the Game Project, and the mission there, to return youth sport to our children and to put the play back in play ball. John is a former collegiate and professional soccer player who transitioned from that into coaching and working as a technical director at children's, youth, high school, and college level. He is a sought-after speaker, featured at TEDx and the National Soccer Coaches Association of America. That's just to name two. He arrived at 1:30 this morning, and this is the research I did myself. John is a former hammerhead. Maybe he wants to explain that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, John O'Sullivan.
All right. Thank you. All right. Is this on? Good. Perfect. Well, thank you all for coming. As Karen said, yes, I did arrive at 1:30 in the morning from Baltimore, Maryland, at the National Soccer Coaches Association of America. And it was phenomenal because I gave a couple of talks there, but I also got to go and learn. And I'm so excited about today because not only do I get to come and speak and meet all of you and share some of the things that I've learned, but then I get to sit next to you and I get to learn from all these incredible speakers, some of whom I've heard and some of whom I have not. And so as we're here today, let's just work hard and learn and take it all in and drink from the fire hose and take good notes and just be open to new ideas and new thoughts. My journey going from a soccer coach on all levels, the collegiate level, I worked, this is probably not a good thing, I worked for the Portland Timbers for a while. It's a good thing for me, maybe not in Vancouver to say that, but and then transitioning full-time in the Changing the Game project and really getting into, well, what is coaching? What is leadership? And the best part about that transition was I got to start learning from coaches in other sports. I got outside of my soccer world, and some of the most amazing learning that I've done has come from other sports. And a couple months ago, I was in Vail, Colorado, and I was doing coaching education for Ski Club Vail, which is the top youth ski development organization in the United States. And the other speaker on that day was a man named Christian Mitter. And Christian Mitter was is the Norwegian men's alpine ski coach. And Norway right now is the most successful alpine skiing nation in the world. This little tiny country with very few population centers next to their mountains is producing the best skiers in the world. And so I was so excited. Well, what is this guy who coaches an individual sport? What's he going to say about the most important thing? And he gets up, and the name of his talk was Culture Comes First. Culture comes first. That if you get the culture right, and if the coach plays their role in the culture, everything else follows. And so that was amazing because every coach I've met in every sport, whether they're an Olympic coach, a professional team coach, says the same thing. The ones with sustained success say culture comes first. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Not the X's and O's. Yes, we have coaches from lots of different sports here, but it's not about the X's and O's, right? There's something so much more. And so when we're talking today, we want to talk about your coaching journey, right? And as we go down that journey, do you have 20 years of coaching experience? Or you just do 1 year and you do it over 20 times? I'm done learning. So change and be adaptable. And I want you to think about, why do you coach? Why do you coach the way you do? Is it because you've got the latest and greatest information? Or do you coach the way you do because it's the way your dad taught you? Or it's the way that you were coached? Because we've learned so much about the brain, more in the last 5 years than in the previous 500. We've learned so much about psychology and motivation. And so I know I don't coach any way like I was coached. I grew up in New York coached by a bunch of Eastern European coaches, and it was very different than the way I coach now. And I think kids were very different then too. So I want to start with a little video on why we do what we do. And I think it's a really good example to sort of frame this discussion. Why do we coach the way we coach? Why do we do the things we do? Are we doing it because we have done all the work and all the research, or are we doing it because we're just following the crowd?
Stop. Pay attention. Take a look at this crowded waiting room. These people may appear to be waiting for the eye doctor, but they're actually waiting for the first test subject in our hidden camera experiment. And here she is, right on time for her 12 o'clock appointment.
Hi, how are you doing?
This woman thinks she's here for a free eye exam.
Have you been here before? No, it's my first time.
What she doesn't know is that everyone else in this room is working for us.
They'll be with you in just a couple minutes.
Today we're running an experiment on social conformity, and the test starts now. Did you hear that? These people sure did. It doesn't take long for our test subject to notice a pattern. Beep means stand up. But why? And if you were in her shoes, what would you do the next time the tone sounds? While you might think you make your decisions all on your own, when it comes to peer pressure, all too often, your brain is just following the crowd. To answer that question, we set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? After just 3 beeps, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone and nobody is watching her, except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there. Now, watch what happens when we introduce another outsider who doesn't know the rules.
Have a seat and they'll be out in just a couple minutes. Thanks so much.
Everybody was doing it, so I thought I was supposed to.
Think she'll teach the new guy what to do? We kept the cameras rolling as more unsuspecting patients arrived. And slowly but surely, what began as a random rule for this woman has now become the social norm for everyone in this waiting room.
That's good, huh? This is a show called Brain Games. And I saw it on an airplane a couple weeks ago, and I just thought it was perfect. Because how does that describe coaching so much? And also as coaches, how does it describe sometimes the parents that we work with, right? Who are all chasing after things like early specialization and winning at all costs, and let's cut all the bad 7-year-olds and get the good ones together, right? And they don't know why they're doing it. They're doing it because everyone else is standing up. And so today I hope you'll start thinking about, am I a coach who stands up because everyone else does? Or am I someone who thinks on my own, who says, this is the best way for my players, my athletes? And so we're going to break that down and unpack that in kind of 5 ways, right? The best coaches in the world, right? The best programs in the world, this is what they do. You got to know yourself. You have to know your athletes. You have to intentionally build culture. You have to educate and manage your parents. And then you're here, so I don't think the 5th one's a problem, but you never, ever stop learning. Gordon mentioned John Wooden. My friend was speaking at the National Basketball Coaches meeting, and sitting in the front row taking notes was 91-year-old John Wooden, who hadn't coached a game in 20-odd years. And his assistant, Rob, said to him, what are you doing taking notes? You're John Wooden. And he said, I'll get something out of this. I know there's something there for me. So let's break those down. So the first one, everyone got 5 sticky notes when you walked in. And here's what I invite you to do. I would like you to take your sticky notes, and we're going to do a little activity here. Write down the 5 qualities of the best coach you ever had. If you never had a good coach, the best teacher you ever had. Right? The 5 things. And there's no wrong answer here, right? Where we're talking about things like they knew a lot about the game, they were passionate, they were a good communicator, they cared, all these different things. So 1 per sticky note on the correct side, right? What is those qualities? There's no wrong answer. I would prefer you don't put, he bought me beer. Right, so go ahead. All right, so as you're getting those finished, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take those sticky notes. We're going to have a little movement here for a second. Please take any sticky note that has to do with your coach's knowledge of the game, the X's and O's. And you're going to stick it up on that wall there, maybe just to the right of the exit sign. And then over here, any sticky note that has to do with your coach's ability to connect, emotional intelligence. So over there is the X's and O's. Over here is things like caring and passion and communication and integrity and all those things. So when you're ready, you can start doing that. We'll get our legs moving. We'll get some blood flowing, right? Connection by the door you came in. Knowledge over there. Yeah, if you want to team up and have someone take one to one side, one to the other, by all means, go ahead. While you're up, shake hands, meet a coach that you don't know, find out something about them, find out why they're here. Awesome. So as we're finishing up, you're probably noticing a pattern emerging. One line a little bit longer than the other. Well, let's get rolling. So look at these walls. Look at these walls. What do we see? What do we see? I've done this exercise all over the world, a couple different continents. I've done this exercise with coaches of every single sport, of all ages and stages, right? And the wall always looks the same. It always looks the same. When I ask coaches, list the qualities of the best coach you ever had, it's always 80-20 or even 90-10. That connection comes before knowledge. The ability to connect matters more than anything else. The ability to connect with your players. Now, it's not to say that knowledge doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But it is to say that it's insufficient, that it's not the only thing that matters. And yeah, take a picture. I have lots of pictures of walls that look like this. Right? I think it's phenomenal. I did the same amount of coaches, 250 coaches or so in Baltimore 2 days ago, and everyone's snapping photos of the walls because one's plastered and one's not. How many of you raise your hand, put all 5 over on this side? Yeah, look around the room. It's usually a quarter, a third of a room. And again, it's not to say that this doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But it's not everything. Now, here's the thing. The biggest problem in coaching that I see is that when we are coaching, when we're doing coaching education, even though every coach says that 90%, 80% of being a great coach is the ability to connect, where do we spend 98% of our time in coaching education? Studying which wall? This wall. This wall. So this is what we have to shift, because these are skills that can be learned too. I love this analogy of the iceberg, right? When you look at an iceberg, what you see above the water is only a small part of it. And who you are, or the true strength of the iceberg, is what's below the water, right? That's the strength. Well, as a coach, it's the same thing. What you do, the X's and O's, is the part above the water. But who you are, your character, truly determines whether you're a great coach, whether you're a coach of significance, or whether you're something else. So we must become, and we must focus on our strengths. We must develop these. We can just kind of shout out popcorn style. Right? What are some of the words you put up on this wall? Shout them out. Passionate. Caring. Loud self-expression, yes. Fair, love it. Enthusiastic, patient. Integrity. Understanding, yes. Encouraging, love it. Yeah. So I collected the first 10,000 or so sticky notes. It was a great project for my, at the time, 6- and 8-year-old to add them up for me. So it's not exactly a totally accurate scientific study, but the number one answer, more than double any other answer, what are the qualities of your best coach? The number one answer is caring. They cared about me. They cared about me first. I've talked to World Cup players. I've talked to Olympians. And I asked that, and they said, this coach, why? Because they cared about me and they valued me as a human being first and foremost. And because of that, I'd run through a wall for them. I believe them. I'd do anything for them. Right? So this is so, so important as a coach that we think about that. I love, there's a great quote by the American President, Teddy Roosevelt. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And then you can pour into them. But you got to develop those relationships first and foremost. Number 2, you got to know your athletes. You have to know your athletes and what they want. We referenced before the Aspen Institute Project Play Initiative. It's a phenomenal initiative, a wealth of great information. And Project Play, in the study called Fun Integration Theory by a woman named Amanda Visick. And they asked kids, what are the qualities, what do you want in your coach? And this is what they said, right? I want to be respected and encouraged. I want a positive role model. I want someone who's a clear, consistent communicator. I want someone who knows what they're talking about. And I want someone, and I kind of added this, combined a few, I want someone who makes it safe to fail. I believe that when people say, what's the ideal youth sports environment? I say an environment without fear. An environment where the kids are not afraid to play. Where they can make decisions and make mistakes and do all that stuff, and it's okay. It's funny, the same guy, Christian Mitter, the Norwegian alpine coach, they said, what is the success of Norway's skiing program? And he said this, he said, we used to look for coaches we used to look for athletes who were great technical skiers. And then we tried to teach them to go fast. So then what we realized was it was actually way more helpful to find kids who weren't great technical skiers, but they weren't afraid. And they were used to just showing up in the mountain, right? And going as fast as they can with as poor technique as possible. And then we could teach them that. Because you think about that, right? You're trying to convince someone as a coach to go down basically where one slight error could mean catastrophic failure or death. And I think that applies to every other sport, right? If we can create an environment where our kids are not afraid to fail, if they're not afraid to try things, if they're not afraid that, if the parents aren't afraid to be patient and let the kids develop and not worry that we didn't win every game, that my kid didn't play every single minute, then boy, I think we could create a much better environment. So this is what kids want. Kids also want us to be a great teacher. They want us to teach. So we're going to do a little thing here because I want to teach you about something called the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is this term coined by two brothers, Chip and Dan Heath, in this book, Made to Stick. And the curse of knowledge is this. It's really hard to remember what it was like not to know something, right? It's really hard once you know something to remember what it was like not to know it. And as a teacher, this is what we're doing. We know it, and we're trying to get our kids to do it. So I'd like people to think of two songs in your head right now. And one of them, make it like a nursery rhyme, little kid song that you think everyone will know. And then the second one, just make it a song that is, something you heard on the radio today or something. So if you have two songs in your head that pop into your head quick, that you think everyone knows, just show me your hands. Isn't it amazing how that makes your mind go blank? All of a sudden, can't think of anything. All right, anyone have a song? Yeah. Anyone else have a song? I see like 3 hands up. Are you guys kidding? They have music in Canada? All right. You're raising your hand, and would you like to come up here for a second? You're not going to have to sing. Maybe you can sing. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to get someone who wasn't exactly dead center in a row to come up here. All right. What was your name? Jody, thanks for coming up. All right, so I'm going to have Jody stand behind the platform here, and just are these mics still up? Perfect. All right, so Jody is going to, on the microphone, tap out a song. Tap, tap, tap. And if you think you know what the song is, just put your hand up. Don't yell it out. Right? There's always one in the room that has to show everyone they're the first one who knows it. Right? So don't yell it out. So your first song, like the nursery rhyme song, just tap it out on there. Was there a couple? I see a couple hands up. What do you think it is?
Yes.
Ba Ba Black Sheep. Is there anyone in this room who has not heard Ba Ba Black Sheep? Maybe we didn't get it. All right, so Ba Ba Black Sheep, what sport do you coach?
Golf.
Okay, you're golf. So, okay, well, there's nothing easy in golf. I was trying to think like, okay, what's an easy thing? All right. Now teach something hard, right? So your second song. Play a second song for us.
Okay.
All right. No one, huh? What was that?
It's all about the bass.
It's all about bass, right? So by laughing, we know it. All right, so play the song again. Play It's All About Bass again now that you guys know what it is. You guys got it now? You can hear the song? All right, so that's the difference. So, Jody, when you are playing the song, what are you hearing in your head?
The song.
You're hearing the song. She's hearing the melody, right? What are you guys hearing? Jody banging on the microphone. All right? But now that you know what it is, then you're hearing the song, right? Right? Thank you very much, Jody. I appreciate that. Phenomenal demonstration. I had this coach once. It was all soccer coaches, and he was this Greek guy, and he comes up, and he's like on the microphone, he's like, and no one gets it. He's like, dude, it's techno. Come on, man. Like, so thanks for not playing techno. Yeah. So what we just showed is the difference between teaching and learning. When we are teaching, we hear the song in our head. And when our kids are learning, they hear us banging on a microphone until they don't. This was a Stanford PhD study by a woman named Elizabeth Newton called Tappers and Listeners. And what she found in this study, she had pairs of people said, you tap, you listen. She gave them a list of 120 songs that, very popular, well-known songs. And what they found was that the tappers, when they asked, what percentage of songs do you think people will get? They said, about 40. And the listeners guessed 2%. 2. So when we're teaching, sometimes we think, yeah, most of the kids are getting it, but they're not. When I go and I work with coaches and I show up at the game in the weekend, the number one thing I hear over and over is, but we went over this in practice, right? But just because you taught it doesn't mean they learned it. And so we have to become better teachers. In the soccer world, we talk about coaching on a slanty line. Now, there's 20 different sports here, so I can't tell you how this might work in your sport, but here's what coaching on a slanty line is. When you were a kid and you went to a party, and someone had a broomstick, and they put one end on the floor and one end up, and then the kids all got to decide where they jumped over the broomstick, right? Remember games like this, right? So every level of learner had an opportunity to jump over at something that was challenging, yet they could have success. Well, this is what we have to do in our practices as well, especially when we're working with really, really young players, because if you're working with young kids, right, you have oftentimes a huge difference in ability. And so how do you create activities, how do you create practices that create a chance for everyone to learn? In the soccer world, I used to go out there and say, okay, everyone has to juggle the ball 100 times by next month. And then I realized that wasn't very helpful to the person who could do 2, because there's no way they're getting 100. And the person who could already do 110, well, guess what? There's no challenge to them either. So then what I said was, okay, what's your record? Next week, try to beat it by 1. And now every single person, if you can do 2, can you do 4? If you can do 100, can you do 110? Every single person has a challenge, has an opportunity to learn, and has a level to learn on. Run activities where kids are dribbling through gates. Instead of saying, do 10 in 30 seconds, you say, hey, what'd you get? Run them through. What'd you get? And it's great because when you say, ask kids, what'd you get? This kid goes, 5, 8, 9, 20, 100, a million. Ooh, okay. All right? And then say, okay, do it again and beat it by 1. That's coaching on a slanty line. So whatever your sport is, think about how you can create opportunities for every level of learner, and that keeps them all motivated and keeps them all challenged and makes them learn together. We have to be patient with talent development. Right? There's this myth that talent just goes like this, right? It's like here and there, and like, oh yeah, it was inevitable. But it's not. Talent development's messy. It's messy. It squiggles. It moves. I helped a man named Ashton Eaton last year put together a TED Talk. He's from Bend, Oregon, where I live. Ashton is the Olympic and world champion in the decathlon. When Ashton was a senior in high school, his coaches said to him, so he's a single mom, no one from his family had ever gone to college before. And his coaches come up and say, hey, Ashton, great news, we have great news. University of Oregon wants to give you a track scholarship to do the decathlon. And he's like, that's awesome, I'm going to college. What's the decathlon? 5 years later, after having not done 7 of the 10 events in high school, he's the world record holder. There's a great story in a book called The Gold Mine Effect by a man named Rasmus Ankersen about a soccer club in Denmark called Midtland. And when they started their program at Midtland, they had their first 16U academy team. And they were trying to pick the kids, and they could only find 15 kids. And the coaches, all these professional coaches, could not agree. Who's this last kid? They had a really good equipment manager. And they didn't want him to quit. And his kid was one of the ones they were going to let go. So they decided to keep him. So they kept this kid, but they said to his dad, but you got to pay his way. Everyone else plays for free, you pay his way. And so he did. And then all these coaches, UEFA A licensed coaches, trained these kids for 6 months, and then the head guy sat him down in a room and said, okay, I want you to put the 5 names in an envelope right now that you think are going to make it to the next level in the next 5 years. And so they all did, 6 coaches, 7 coaches. And then we're going to open it up in 5 years and see which kids did and which kids didn't. Not a single kid put the name of the equipment manager's son. His name was Simon Kjær. And 5 years later, in 2010, he was starting for Denmark in the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. He was playing for Roma, $20 million transfer. Not one expert coach at 15 years old could pick this kid out. So when I meet coaches who work with 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds, like, oh yeah, I can pick them. No, you can't. I can't. We're really good, certainly in the US and I think in Canada, we're really good at identifying the talent that shouts. But what about the talent that whispers? What about those kids who aren't born next to that, whatever that arbitrary calendar cutoff is? We got to create space. We got to find space for them too. So we have to be patient in development. Coaching boys, coaching girls, right? Who coaches both? Is there a difference? What are some of the things that are different? Go ahead. Yell them out. Girls listen. Emotion. Yeah. Competition. Yeah. Relationship.
Girls always think they did something wrong. Boys think they don't do anything wrong. They pick them up.
I would agree. Yeah. Not sure about that. I don't know that anyone's going to eat lunch with you, sir. No. Let's just agree that there's lots of differences, right? It's not the same. All right? So it is a difference. One of my, so here's a couple little bullet points in that. One of my favorite quotes is a man named Anson Dorrance, who's won 22 or 21 NCAA titles at UNC women's soccer. He used to coach the men's team there too. And he says this, he says, boys are hard to coach and easy to manage. Girls are easy to coach and hard to manage. Boys are always like, you tell them to do something like, well, why, coach? All right, they want to know why. Girls will do it, but then it's all about the relationships and the team boundaries, right? Boys, in study, there's a great book, and I'll put it up at the end, called Top Dog by a woman named Ashley Merriman and Poe Bronson. What they say in there, and these are studies that are done on politics, boys are very good at ignoring the odds, and girls are very good at calculating the odds, right? So when they don't think they have a chance to win, they don't necessarily go all in. Where boys are like that scene from Dumb and Dumber, where they're like, oh, so you're saying there's a chance. So it's much easier to convince them, like, yeah, you got to go for it here, right? And then the other piece, and then this is what I think is really fascinating, what I put in the slide, is that research shows that from a very, very young age, girls tend to congregate in pairs. And when you have pairs, you have a winner and a loser. You have a best and a worst. And boys tend to congregate in groups. And as long as boys have a role in the group, right? You're the biggest, you're the fastest, you're the strongest, you're the funniest, you're the smartest, boys are okay with that. Well, when you fast forward that into a team sports environment later on, what you have is in girls' teams often, and again, before I get myself in trouble, we're talking about in general, right? Whenever we're talking about generalities, they end at the individual level. So just because I'm talking about this doesn't mean that this applies to Serena Williams or Abby Wambach or whatever. But in general, in the girls' team environment, right, you have a search for equality. So sometimes your least strong players, they're the ones they want to quit because they feel like they're letting the group down, they're dragging the group down. And your strongest players, they don't go all in. You're like, why are you holding back? And it's because they don't want to stand out too much because it ruins the equilibrium. Boys, because they tend to congregate in groups, as long as you create a role for everyone, they're okay with it. Well, I coach very high-level girls and guys, collegiately and high-level club soccer. And when I would have a 16, 17-year-old boys team, we'd get a guest player, and I'd bring him in, and I'd introduce him to the team, be like, hey, what's your name? Hey, I'm John. Can you play? Sweet, let's go. Girls would be like, who is she? Why is she here? Whose place is she going to take? All right? So we have to know these things, and we have to manage these things. We can't just say, hey, one size fits all. Right? All right. Now this I could spend a whole day on. Intentionally build a values-based culture. Right? This is so, so critical as a coach. Right? That we have team values, that we have core values, that we intentionally build the culture. Every single team, even if you're coaching an individual sport, every group has a culture. So you might as well intentionally create it. I've never met a soccer coach who doesn't work on their system of play, but yet they spend no time on their team culture. And just like Christian Mitter said, right, in an individual sport like skiing, get the culture right. Get people to show up, to eat right, to sleep right, to train hard, to live like an athlete, to come in and fit, right? And everyone else rises to the standard. That's what great cultures do. And this is what we have to do too. We can't do that. One of my favorite stories about culture is by, who knows who the most successful sporting team is in the professional era? You can just yell it out. No, Montreal Canadiens, no. What's that? I heard someone say it. New Zealand All Blacks. Thank you. Are you from New Zealand? Or are you just, okay. All right, New Zealand All Blacks, all right, have won 87% of their games. They just won the World Cup, first nation ever to win it 2 in a row. They have a core value based in humility, and they call it sweep the shed. After every single game that the All Blacks play, at the end of the game, 80,000 people leave the stadium, millions watch on TV, the coaches are done, the press leaves, and everyone else clears out. The players sweep the locker room. Every time. The players sweep the shed. Because their value of humility is that you are supposed to leave the shirt in a better place than you got it. And you can never, ever forget the little things that it takes to be great. Sweep the shed. And I'm constantly shocked when I watch a youth soccer tournament and I watch 12-year-old kids who can't clean up the bench after the game, right? See skiers and mom and dad are carrying their skis to the hill. No, carry your own skis. Sweep your own shed, right? This is a values-based culture. That's where success comes from. Now, values-based cultures are also based in trust. If we had time today, we do, now everyone's probably seen one of these silly little trust fall exercises. And if I called a bunch of you up and said, okay, let's do a trust fall. Now, there's probably, most everyone in this room, if I decided to lay down, if there was 2 or 3, you could probably catch me, right? So I trust that you have the ability. But that doesn't mean I trust you. I don't know you. You might not like Americans, right? You might be like, oh, here you go, right? So trust has so much more than just ability. Trust is about connection. That's trust. That wall is trust, right? That's part, but it's that wall. Trust is about dependability. Do I do what I say? Do I mean what I say, and do I follow through? And then trust is also about believability, which is really vulnerability. Do I admit when I'm wrong? I think one of the most powerful things that we can do as a coach is admit when we are wrong. I was wrong. I made a mistake. Boy, I've had plenty of pre-game speeches where I pulled my team aside, where I was like, you know what, I have not been a good coach. And for those of us who maybe work in a situation where we coach multiple teams, and you can be at an event, you'd be there on a weekend, you could be like, hey guys, and you get one team that's really bad, and then you jump in with your other one, and you're like, oh man, and you're really nasty to them in the beginning, and they're like, whoa, why is coach mad at us? Like, we just got here, right? And you have to be not afraid to admit that you're wrong. So we can all create culture. This is a guy he used to work for me, and now he's the head of leadership at IMG Academy. Every one of us can create culture in our teams, right? And the way that we can do that, right, is a simple sheet like this. How do we create culture? This is his 6th grade girls basketball team, the Suns. And he sits down before the first practice, and he has them write down, what are the qualities? Give me some, he says, give me some adjectives that describe a great teammate. And so they go, what's an adjective? And then he tells them, oh yeah, encourager, sense of humor, caring, selfless, determined, hard worker, team player. So they write them all down. And at the bottom here, they make a commitment, right? I commit to be the type of teammate described above. And they all sign their name. Coach James signs his name. And then they have their little chant, Fun in the Sun. The team is called the Suns. There's your values. There's everyone signing on to them. And there's your reminder. Every one of you could do that with your teams tomorrow. And that's how you create culture in your team. Because then when things change, people will say, are you just stop practice and say, wait, you guys signed up for this. This is what you said you want to do. So do it right. Am I running out of time?
We wanted to leave a little bit of time for
Okay.
question and answer, so...
I will.
Yeah,
I will
thank
be
you.
right there. Okay, hold on. So, culture. Parents, no one has a problem with them, right? I can just skip this part? All right. I might have to. You got to manage your parents, right? You got to communicate with your parents. You have to work with them to make the culture good. They're part of your culture. Don't ignore them.
Did you tell
Or
the coach to
this
put you aside the
happens.
game? Yep. How many times?
I was standing right next to him.
Are you sure? Because I stood right next to you.
I was by him as many times as I could be.
Dude, you're not getting it done. Let me explain something to you. If you do something wrong, do I tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, I correct it. Or I tell you so you can correct it. How do you know what to correct if you don't even know why he pulled you out of the game? What did I tell you about that? What, are you scared of him or something?
No.
So why don't you go ask him? Like right now, you know we're gonna have this conversation after the game. You know it's coming. Okay, this is part of you becoming a young man. If someone does something, you're just gonna take it? So if I was to walk up to you and just slap you inside your face, what are you gonna do? Just turn around and be like, I don't know why that guy did that. It doesn't make any sense, Jay. You act like you're 10 or 9 or 8. Dude, you're just going through the motions. If you're gonna be selfish, you know what? You have other brothers and sisters, okay? We'll take you from out of that school and give them a chance and put them in a private school. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It confuses me. What's the problem?
Every time I come back, like in the car, I always feel like I'm in trouble or I did something wrong.
Well, did you?
Yeah.
You've had more personal training than any of those kids out there. Okay? Back to the drawing board. Back up to getting early, back up inside the morning, okay? Because it doesn't make any sense. You have me driving back and forth from this school, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, for you to go out and do absolutely nothing. I don't understand why you don't get it. I don't understand it.
If anyone's seen that show, it was called Trophy Kids. It was on HBO. Anyone see it? All right. That kid ended up quitting football. And he also moved out from his dad. Moved across the country, didn't live with him anymore. Right? If we don't create the culture, if we don't educate our parents, that's what can happen on the ride home. And then never stop learning, right? Here's just some great resources. You're welcome to take a picture, whatever. Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman. Legacy is a book all about the All Blacks. Top Dog, The Science of Winning and Losing by Pro Bronson and Ashley Merriman. And Practice Perfect by Doug Lamoff, teacher educator. 42 rules for getting better at getting better. A couple great blogs that I like, and I'll provide these slides if you weren't quick enough on the draw there. And so my last video is this, right? What does the modern coach do? What does the modern coach sound like?
Everybody heads up high. Heads up high. Let's talk for a moment here. Look, I gotta see your eyes, guys. Okay? There's no disappointment, okay, in your effort, okay, in the whole tournament, in the whole season. It's been an incredible journey, okay? We fought, look at the score, 8-7, okay, 12-10 in hits, came to the last out, we didn't quit. That's us. Boys, that's us. The only reason why, okay, I'll probably end up shedding a tear is because this is the last time I'm going to end up coaching you guys. But I'm going to bring back with me, and the coaching staff are going to bring back with me, and you guys are going to bring back something, okay, that no other team can provide but you guys. That's pride. Okay? Pride. You're going to take that for the rest of your life, what you provided for a town in Cumberland. You had the whole place jumping, right? You had the whole state jumping. You had New England jumping. You had ESPN jumping, okay? Because want to know why? They like fighters. They like sportsmen. They like guys who don't quit. They like guys who play the game the right way. Okay, we got down to the nitty-gritty. We're one of the best teams in the world. Think about that for a second. For the world, right? So we need to go see our parents because they're so proud of you. Okay? Well, one more. I want a big hug. I want everyone to come in here for one big hug. Okay? One big hug. One big hug. Then we're gonna go celebrate. Hey boys, then we're gonna go celebrate with our parents, and then tomorrow we're gonna celebrate, and then we're gonna come back home to a big parade. Okay? Got it? Okay? I love you guys. I'm gonna love you forever, and you're giving me the most precious moment, okay, of my athletic and coaching career. And I've been coaching a long time, okay? A long time. I'm getting to be an old man. I need memories like this. I need kids like this, okay? You're all my boys, okay? You'll be the boys of summer, okay? So for the last time, we're gonna try to suck it up, and we're gonna yell Americans, okay? 1, 2, 3, Americans! Okay, boys, good job.
Is that someone you'd want to coach your kids? Right? In the semifinals of the Little League World Series, and, you know, listen to what he talked about. He talked about their values. We're like fighters, we're like sportsmen, we're like people who do play the game the right way, we're like people who don't quit. Right? That's coaching. And if you are a coach and you're working with kids and it's public and it's emotional and you're keeping score, the things that you say and the things that you do, the things that come out of your mouth can stick with a kid for a lifetime. And you don't get to pick and choose what they remember and what they don't. So you have to be very, very intentional about everything you say and everything you do. And if you do those things, if you get to know yourself, if you get to know what kids want from you, if you build your culture, if you make the parents part of the culture, right, and you never stop learning, you will become a coach of positive significance, and you will change lives. I promise you that. Thank you. I saved 10 minutes for questions.
Everyone's so coachable in this room. Thank you very much, John. That was an excellent, excellent presentation. So we do have time for questions now, and I believe there's 2 handheld mics in the theater. So if you have questions for John, please put up your hand. The mic will come to you, and please wait for the microphone too, because everyone wants to hear what you're going to ask. So we'll give you a second to think about it. John, I have one. I'm a hockey parent. My son and my daughter. My daughter's coaches are here. Yay, ladies. Both play hockey. You talked about coaching parents. And so when you have a difficult parent, how do you sort of set the stage within your team for that sort of parent behavior to fall in line with what you're trying to teach?
Yeah, that's great. So, you know, in every culture, we're going to have difficult parents, right? We're going to have difficult people. That's why I think you start with values. Right, you start with values. This is who we are, and this is what we stand for. There's a great story about Southwest Airlines, right? If anyone ever flown Southwest, and I think maybe in Canada, like WestJet is a very similar type of airline for how they, you know, treat people. But in Southwest, one of their core values is have fun. And so if you ever fly Southwest, they're always telling jokes during the flight, the safety check and all that. And if you don't know how to buckle a seatbelt, maybe you don't belong on an airplane and things like that, right? And so One time a woman wrote a letter to the CEO and said, I am so offended that you have, that they're telling jokes during this part, and that they're making, jokes and doing all this stuff. I just don't think that's right. And so the CEO sent her a 3-word letter back, and it said, "We'll miss you." Because they knew who they were as a company, because they had core values, and because they knew what they stood for, they weren't afraid to say, "We'll miss you." So as a coach, when you're dealing with a difficult parent, right, you go and you educate them and you teach them and you try to get them to be part of the culture. And the best cultures are ones where the parents hold each other accountable, not you as a coach having to do it. But eventually, if they won't get on board, you have to say, "We'll miss you." And that's okay too. Right? And then what's sad is usually it's the kid who suffers, but the one child cannot take precedence over 10 or 16 or whatever. So, yeah. Was there other questions? Any mics in the stands there? No? Can you see? Because I can't. Oh,
Great.
Okay, so my question is, like how you were saying that boys ask why, and I'm a 17-year-old and I coach 15-year-olds, and my brother is on the team, so I get why, I ask why a lot. So I don't know, like, how do you think, what could I do to make them like buy in and like ask why less, I guess?
well,
Or like, just believe what I say, I guess.
having a younger brother, I can promise you he'll never stop asking why.
Yeah, well, I think he's probably one that gets it the most, because I think I talk to him the most is at home or whatever. But
all I'll say is this: whether you could be coaching college, you could be coaching pros, and they'll ask why. They'll want to know why we're doing this. And so I think one of the things, that little single-season culture sheet is really, really important. But also helping your players come up with solutions, right? So at halftime, if you stand up as a coach and you say, "All right, this is what we're going to do," right? It's your solution. If you go before them, you say, "Hey, what's going well out there? What's not working? How can we fix it?" And then they come up with some ideas of how we can fix it. Now you can maybe tweak their ideas, or you can say, "Yeah, that sounds good, let's do that." Right? Now they have come up with it. They're going to work harder. They're going to play harder because they came up with a solution. So if you're the only one providing solutions, they're going to keep asking why. If you start giving them ownership of the culture and ownership of some of the solutions, then guess what? They're going to start doing it because it was their idea. And it might fail, but they're going to try a lot harder for a bad idea that was theirs than they'll try for a bad idea that was yours.
Thank you.
Yeah. We got some up front here. Coming right behind you there.
Earlier you referenced personal records when you're talking about skill development. In a group setting, how do you sort of manage that so that you can be on top of it and be, what's reasonable when you're trying to determine how many different tests each kid should be doing, and if they're improving?
Yeah, so how do we manage that stuff? We have so many different sports here, it's hard to say. I can only speak from my area of expertise, and depending on your level, right, if you're coaching a college sport, you might have the resources and the interns and the volunteer coaches to manage all that stuff, and that's great, right? At UNC, Anson Dorrance calls it his competitive cauldron, where they have 30 different games and tests in every game, whether they're playing 3v3, 2v1, running a sprint, they keep it and they track it and they give points and they post it publicly for everyone to see how you're doing. If you're coaching a 12-year-old team, you probably don't have those resources, and you might just have to rely on kids. But what I would do is I would just come up and say, okay, let's say it was juggling a soccer ball, I would say, okay, I would write down what they said their best was, right? So I could track that. But if they said their personal best was 50, and in practice they can't get 10, they're probably stretching the truth a little bit, right? So but again, it goes back to holding themselves accountable. And again, great cultures are ones where it's not coach holding everyone accountable, it's player-to-player accountability is great. So they start holding each other accountable. And what happens if you do something like that is they show up at practice and they get a game going, or they just start juggling and keeping the ball up instead of standing around, or as I call it in soccer, with little kids, they show up, concussion practice, where they're all shooting and hitting kids in the back of the head and stuff like that. So, yeah. Probably time for one more.
Thank you. Do you have suggestions or feedback when coaching your own child?
That's a whole book right there.
Sorry. Okay.
I actually have a big section of that in my book, which sometimes this text thing doesn't work from Canada, but you can all have it for free, the ebook of Changing the Game. If it doesn't, take that information down and email me, or I can provide it to Chris for the conference attendees, and I'll just give you an email link to get it. But coaching your own kid is really, really hard. Some kids love it, some kids don't like it. I think the best piece of advice is make sure that when practice ends, you take off your coaching hat and put back on your mom hat or your dad hat. That is the most important thing, is that so many kids feel like practice never ends, right? And that you keep talking about the game or the team or all these things at dinner, at whatever. Number two, understanding that it can be very hard socially when you're coaching your kids, especially if you're a demanding coach, because some kids don't like lots of standards being put on them. They're not demanded to do anything, so you're asking a lot of them, and then they take that out on your son or daughter. And so number three, then just ask your kids every season, would you like me to coach your team again? And get their input. And if they say no, do your best to respect that. Yeah, because you can do it, right? I mean, Bob Bradley coached his son on the U.S. national team in soccer, so it can be done at a very high level, and it can certainly be done at a youth level. So, yeah. All right, so there's all my stuff. There's all my info and the things that we do at Changing the Game Project. And actually, last little thing, this summer in Colorado, we're doing like this over 3 days with my friend Dr. Jerry Lynch, who's a sports psychologist. Just won the NBA title with Golden State. Won 35 NCAA titles, teaching what he calls his way of champions. So that's in Boulder, Colorado in July. If you really love this and you can't get enough like me and you want to do more. So thank you. You guys were awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you.